Their agenda is to protect their livestock. But if your agenda is just to kill wolves, you don't want these methods to work.
We're not advocating for or seeing a need to go into the areas where wolves are just have natural prey, and we don't have a problem with those wolves. We only have a problem with those that are depredating on livestock and causing issues with functioning cattle ranches.
Yesterday, we talked about the concerns of conservationists who say Idaho's taking the wolf population control and that measure, taking it too far, especially when it comes to aerial hunting. That'd be hunting, shooting a wild wolf out of a helicopter. It's a practice managed and controlled by the state. And this group of wolf advocates, they want it to stop immediately. But there's another side of this coin, obviously, which several of you pointed out to us after the story ended yesterday. JR, Randy, and Sean saying, what about the proponents of popping wolves from the whirly bird? Randy asked us if it was really that difficult to cover both sides, not necessarily on the same day. Well, Randy, you've touched on something that is kind of what we do, a 2-8 standard, if you will. If we don't get a chance to hear from one side of a story on one day, we can always do it on another day, hopefully the next day. So you may have questions after yesterday's story, like why are we hunting wolves in the first place, and what problems are we trying to solve? Well, if you ask a rancher, and Andrew Bartline did, it's to protect his business and livelihood.
Running a ranch is seemingly synonymous with our statehood.
You know, steak and potatoes, they go together.
But seemingly more difficult with a newer nuisance. Cameron Mulroney knows firsthand.
Yeah.
He works for the Idaho Cattle Association.
You know, it's something that we continue to battle. We know it will be an ongoing battle. They're part of Idaho. They're here.
Here, only after the federal government relocated a protected wolf population in 1995.
And we expect them to be here for generations to come.
And by 2015, the right to regulate that growing population was returned back to the state.
It is something that we need to work to control.
Because the growth of Idaho wolves has a direct impact on Idaho's ranchers and producers.
Mature cows and bulls, wolves are about the only animal that we have in the state that is taking them down.
The Idaho Wolf Depredation Control Board tracks cattle killings attributed to wolves and further manages population control.
We're not advocating for or seeing a need to go into the areas where wolves are just have natural prey, and we don't have a problem with those wolves. We only have a problem with those that are depredating, you know, on livestock. Wolves are very intelligent. They are an apex predator. They teach their young, right? So they're doing this process not just for food, but for training, and that's different than other predators.
Wolves can kill for sport.
Yes, just for the fun of it.
But killing sometimes isn't even the problem. Cows constantly stressed by wolves or other predators have lower birth rates.
That's also what keeps the wheels on the bus going in the cattle industry, is that next calf crop.
To protect the interest of the cattle industry, the control board opened a new practice this year. Now, approved ranchers can work directly with trappers and hunters to kill wolves in their approved regions.
The difference is the contract now is to make sure that that's focused on areas of high depredation, where we're seeing conflict between cattle operations and wolves.
Conservationists oppose this in a petition signed and released this week. It mainly concerns an accepted application benefiting a Nevada-based hunter, Trevor Walsh. He has 4 previous trapping violations in 5 years. The conservationists also point to these maps, showing a high number of hunted wolves in blue that is not near the areas of documented killed cattle in yellow.
I think their concerns are a little over-exaggerated in the fact that we've had these methods available to utilize, and we haven't seen a huge increase in the take of wolves across the state.
A state the Cattle Association depends on.
A lot of factors that come into, you know, a successful cattle operation.
And from what they can measure, wolves are the antithesis to the equation.
A hungry animal or a hungry man only has one problem, and that's to find more food. So if we don't control that population at some point, they're going to have to expand down to areas where we wouldn't normally typically see, you know, that species.
Yesterday, we heard from the Wood River Wolf Project. They manage about 20,000 sheep in Blaine County, and without killing wolves, they say they only lose about 5 sheep a year. Now, they do it by leaning heavily into a wolf's natural instincts, using cattle dogs, lighting, sound. And the Cattle Association, Brian, agrees this can work. There are some non-lethal measures you can take, but on a large-scale cattle operation where the cattle aren't exactly herded together, you'd have to employ another person to keep them in one spot. They say it just doesn't translate as well to cattle because they are naturally different than sheep.
Yeah.
There have also been 1,300 cattle that have been killed attributed to wolves in the state from 2013 to May of this year. So it's a pretty large number.
This has been an issue for years, if not decades, here in Idaho with the wolves.
Yep.
But the reason it's getting attention now is because of that contract for that guy in Nevada?
That guy really tipped off the conservationists, and so they signed a petition where they're saying, first off, we want the aerial shooting to stop. They have a specific issue with that, and he seemed to bring attention to it. So we'll see if anything changes. They're looking at pursuing legal measures.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew.